This is Tampa Bay Today with Schreiner. Call now, 888-404-1010. That's 888-404-1010. Welcome back to Tampa Bay Today at Money Talk 1010 a.m. I am Schreiner. Our executive producer is Pat George, and we have Amanda Marker with us today from Windmoor Healthcare. And we're going to be talking about the Compact Act. It's been a while that we've wanted to have you on the show so we can go over this to help understand what we can do for veterans in suicidal crisis. That is what this act is going to focus on, correct?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. The entire purpose of this act is to reduce veteran suicide.
All right. Before that's a big issue, and we have such a military base, and I don't mean MacDill by base. I mean just the base in our community of military, both active and veterans that are living here in the Tampa Bay area, that this can have some very good impact for them or people they know. We keep hearing the numbers about the number of suicides a day, and we keep hearing the number 22, and it wavers from time to time, but we need to get that going down. So tell us, before we get into this, Amanda, a little bit about yourself and about Windmoor Healthcare, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a licensed mental health clinician, and I am also the Director of Business Development for Windmoor Healthcare. We are a freestanding behavioral health hospital in Clearwater. We have also an outpatient clinic in Tampa. So we treat behavioral health disorders, so that could be substance use, that could be mental health disorders, we are a Baker Act receiving facility as well.
Right.
And one of the things that I like to share is that we do have a dedicated military and veteran unit. So we have a uniform personnel program, and that is a solely dedicated unit for individuals who are active duty, who are veterans, first responders, guard, and they have their own dedicated staff, their own psychiatrist. A lot of the staff who are working there are veterans themselves, so they're able to connect on that understanding.
Right, because I've worked with a number of veterans charities that try to provide an outlet for them, someone to contact with who knows what they went through. So having veterans on staff that know and understand, because that's one of those problems. We were just talking about it earlier. When it comes to mental health, one of the worst things you can do is just go, be dismissive about it. Even if you don't understand, acknowledge that somebody's having an experience that you need to work with, and being open to it, so that they don't feel like you're just brushing them off. And having somebody who has been through some of your specific experiences will help that connection happen faster, because you have to develop trust. If you don't develop the trust, if you can't get them to be vulnerable with their issues, you're never going to work through them successfully. So the fact that Windmoor Healthcare has developed such a program, not just for the community, but specifically tailoring one program for veterans, I think is amazing. So kudos to your organization for doing that. Now, Amanda, you're here today to talk about the Veterans Compact Act. Now, I went over it in brief and read the title of it earlier, Veterans Comprehensive Prevention, Access to Care, and Treatment Act of 2020. So here we are in 2023. Tell us about the Compact Act and what it's now doing, because this began on January 17th.
Correct. So this went into effect January 17th of this year.
Okay.
And the whole act, there are 9 parts to it that are all related to reducing veteran suicide, whether that's starting programs or monitoring. The one that I think is really important to us, that is most beneficial for me to share, is that individuals who are veterans can access acute treatment. That means if they are currently suicidal, they can access emergency care anywhere. They do not have to go to the VA. The point of this is to get them in treatment as quickly as possible. So if there's someone who is a veteran who is in a suicidal crisis, we want to get them in our doors. We want to get them in without the barriers of having to go through potentially maybe not even wanting to go to the VA.
Right, the red tape or whatever it is that's holding them off. And I just had this thought, I have nothing to base this on. When veterans are in crisis, is it more likely to be violent or less, like to themselves, I'm saying? I'm not saying, outwardly, but inwardly. Is it more likely to be violent than somebody who is going through a mental health crisis and they don't have that PTSD experience from service?
Now,
I don't know.
As far as the violence, I don't have the
Okay.
research on that, but what I can share with you. So in 2014, the U.S. military commissioned the largest survey ever done in the military on mental health, and they discovered that that rates of major depression were 5 times higher for individuals who served in the armed forces than for civilians. and rates of PTSD were 15 times higher.
Wow.
And a separate study that the Department of Veteran Affairs estimated, and you touched on this briefly, was that 22 veterans a day take their own lives, which is over 50%, 57.3% exactly, higher than the average rate of non-veteran adult deaths by suicide. So it is vital that we are getting the word out that veterans have options for treatment.
Now, since we have such a diverse military, men and women, are you seeing this impacting women as much as men, the emotional crisis, mental health issues as well? I mean, it's kind of even across the board, isn't it? Because they're out there doing the same jobs in the same dangerous situations.
It is fairly even for what we're seeing, but I would also like to add that female veterans are victims of physical sexual assault, so
Right.
military sexual trauma at 3-to-1 rate in the service.
Right.
And that is actually one of the eligibility requirements or statutes to be able to use this Compact Act is having experienced MST while in service.
Okay.
If you have experienced that, you are eligible for crisis services.
Right. So MST being military sexual trauma?
Yes.
All right. Well, then let's reset a little bit. Who is eligible for Compact Act status?
Yeah, so I want to put a little background out here. So there are an estimate of 9 million unenrolled veterans currently who are not enrolled with the VA system.
Wow.
So that means that they are not engaging with routine health care, mental health care, substance use treatment. And this will open the door for these individuals to access crisis care. So we don't live in a perfect world, so there are stipulations to this.
Right.
Individuals who are eligible to receive care under the Compact Act, they've served 24 months of active service, and they were discharged on conditions other than dishonorable.
Right. So most servicemen and women will do 2 years. That's 24 months, and most of them are honorably leaving the service. So as long as that's the case, then they become eligible.
Correct, even other than honorable.
Okay.
As long
as it's not dishonorable, which means basically criminal activity, I would assume, from what I know from watching and reading over the years, news reports and hearing about these things. So that basically opens it up to almost everyone who served is eligible under the Compact Act.
And that's my understanding. As well for individuals if they served 100 days under combat exclusion or in a support of a contingency operation.
Okay, so this is going to be invaluable, but what bothers me is you said there are 9 million current veterans who aren't engaged in any kind of health care through the VA system. They're not enrolled.
Correct.
So with that, my understanding is as well, working and trying to understand mental health, my own and others included, this can come to them at any time. They may have been out of the service 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then it can still come back to them, and they can have those mental issues because our brains are crazy. I mean, the way they work, anything could trigger an episode or a memory, something they've buried and they've never dealt with. So this becomes important that anybody that, even if they have been out of the service a long time, if you did your 24 months and then as long as you weren't discharged dishonorably, doesn't matter if it's been 20 years since you served, you're still eligible, correct?
Correct. And the best thing about this is it's not a one-time situation. This is every time. So if you come in and say you come into Windmoor Healthcare and we do an assessment and you're meeting inpatient criteria, we get you on the unit and you have treatment. When you discharge, when you go home, if you need that service again, it's
still
available.
There. Yeah,
it's
not a one and done
Right.
thing. So how does Windmoor Healthcare fit into this? I know you said you had the special veteran department with some veterans on staff that understand what they can expect to come in the door. How else is Windmoor Healthcare helping with this? What is their role?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So Windmoor Healthcare, we are a center of excellence among Patriot Support Centers. So what that means is that we have that dedicated unit, dedicated staff, and the emphasis is on maintaining a close relationship with communication with command. So we accept individuals who are active duty, and we want to make sure that when they're with us, that they're maintaining communication with command,
Right.
that they are maintaining their physical fitness, that they're able to return fit for duty. And we have physical trainers, certified physical trainers that come on site and do physical training every day. We offer experiential therapies, weekly clinical updates. We're flexible with visitations for command. So the goal of that entire program for our active duty is returning those servicemen and women ready to go back to duty.
Right.
And for our veterans, like I said, we've got veterans on staff. They understand the culture. They understand the language. They've been there. And it helps our veteran patients coming in feel a little bit more at ease and able to let their guard down.
Right. You were mentioning that you have the physical fitness training as an availability, and we also know from long experience and from studies and everything that physical fitness and being active is a great way to alleviate a lot of the symptoms of depression. And I didn't go down this rabbit hole yet, but have you heard about joy hormones?
I haven't.
Basically, when you work out, you're squeezing something out of your muscles that helps the whole body feel better, and it leads to serotonin and all these positive issues. That there's actually science behind the work, not just because you are healthier, but there's actually a chemical release from your active status that makes you. So that's a rabbit hole. Like I'm trying to remember. I saw this like a month ago and bookmarked it in my head. Research joy hormones, but I saw some stuff on social media talking about that very thing and why physical activity and exercise does make you feel better.
I recall the exact reel that you're referring to, and I have seen that now.
Right.
You started talking about
Right.
it. And it's really interesting because the mind-body connection is so real. There are things that we can do in our everyday life to affect and change for positive how we feel.
Right, but it's hard though. It can be hard for anybody. It's like I'm in a position now where I have taken on so many responsibilities, and I've got so many balls I'm juggling, trying not to drop. So what is being dropped? My health. I'm not getting the right sleep that I need. I'm not being as active as I used to, which I wear a fitness tracker. I'm not even getting as many steps in as I was 6 months ago. And I know this, and I know it's a problem, and yet I'm not doing anything about it because I'm trying to live up to all my other obligations. And I'm not suffering from that kind of mental health, that could make it even more difficult to take those steps. So having a resource like Windmoor Healthcare that is going to bring you in, understand what you're going through, get you the therapy you need, and get you active, and you can be on a program, that's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. It can compound, certainly.
Right.
If you have mental health issues to begin with, and then we're compounding that lack of self-care and compounding, letting things go and letting things slip in lieu of other responsibilities, it can certainly become a problem before we know it.
So what can we do to help? Somebody just that may know a veteran or just is impassioned about this topic of mental health. What can somebody off the street do to help in this situation?
What you and I are doing right now is perfect. The more we talk about mental health, the more we talk about suicide, substance use. This is a huge step forward. If we can change the tide of eliminating the stigma around seeking mental health and substance use treatment, we can probably get more people in a place to where they're ready to ask for help. I'm going to share a little bit here. I got to be careful how I do this because it isn't my story, but I was partially involved. Somebody that was suffering from depression, not military, but still very serious depression. One of the things she pointed out is that people didn't understand and just told her, well, tomorrow will be a better day. And she pointed out that she knew that the life things would get better. There'd be ups and downs. She understood that. She also understood she was loved and people cared about her, but they still didn't understand her, so they just didn't want to talk about it. And so talking about it, at least listening and understanding that there are people having a human experience that they need to work through, let them do it, be there for them. That's a big part of it, just being there for them and being accepting, right? That's absolutely right. And it's important to know that both can be true.
Yeah.
I can know that tomorrow will be there, and I can also feel the lowest of my low.
Because sometimes it's a chemical issue. The brain or the body isn't doing what it needs, and it may need medication. It will certainly need therapy as well. I don't think they should ever be done one without the other. But being available and listening to somebody when they're in crisis is super important.
Absolutely. Educating yourself on the signs that someone may be contemplating suicide is really important. So I'd love to go over the signs, the warning signs, if we can.
You know what? Let's take a break right here if you don't mind. We're speaking with Amanda Marker from Windmoor Healthcare, And we're talking about the Compact Act, which we'll get back to a little bit more about some of those details, I think, if there's anything we want to point out specifically. But I have as much as my show today as you would like to go over this, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So we'll come back and we're going to go over the warning signs of suicide, and we'll talk about what you should be looking for. And then I'm assuming we'll also get into what you can do if you start to recognize this and how to handle it. This is Tampa Bay Today at Money Talk 1010 a.m. I am Schreiner, and we are having a great conversation today. We are speaking with Amanda Marker from Windmoor Healthcare about the Compact Act and everything that Windmoor Healthcare is prepared to do to help people in our community. Now, they do help everyone, but they do have a specific department for veterans, and that's what we've been talking about. When we left off, we were talking about the warning signs of suicide. So why don't we get back into that? These are one of the things that you and I can do to the people around us in our circles. Keep an eye for what might be a warning sign.
Yeah, certainly. So if you or a loved one are experiencing these symptoms, there might be a need for an increased mental health support services. So there are a few things to look out for. If somebody is talking about wanting to die, they're talking about guilt, shame, talking about being a burden to others. If you're hearing these things, it's really important to take note of that. If you notice that these people or even yourself are feeling empty, hopeless, trapped, feeling like there's no reason to live, extremely sad, more anxious or agitated, even rage.
Right, because people can flip very quickly. One moment they're sad, one moment they're inexplicably angry, and it can happen at a moment's notice too.
Absolutely, and it's even really important to be careful if somebody who's usually irritable or very down or depressed suddenly becomes calm, suddenly becomes one with themselves.
Or
be
resigned.
mindful.
Resigned might be a word.
Right.
Like they've made a decision.
They've made a decision. That's exactly right. So that's critical.
Right. What are some of the other warning signs of suicide?
Yeah, so changes in behavior. Maybe they're making a plan or researching ways to die, withdrawing from their friends or saying goodbye, giving away important items that they used to have, or researching how to make a will.
Right.
Taking dangerous risks like extremely fast driving or really extreme mood swings, eating or sleeping less, using more drugs or alcohol, or becoming more dependent on drugs and alcohol.
All right, we're going to take another break here because we're coming up on ABC News, national news, and traffic with Pat George, and we're going to come back and then talk about some of the steps that we can take if we see any of these signs that somebody may be struggling with. This is Tampa Bay Today at Money Talk 10. This is Tampa Bay Today at Money Talk 1010 a.m. I am Schreiner, along with our executive producer, Pat George. We're having a great conversation about mental health, specifically in regards to veterans and what they may be dealing with or suffering during or after service. And we just went over the warning signs of suicide. I have Amanda Marker from Windmoor Healthcare in here with me. And next month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we had a little conversation off the air, and I think we're going to do a regular series. I'd like to have her come in like once a week that month to talk about some of the issues that Windmoor Healthcare is seeing, what she's seeing in her practice, and how they're doing things to help our community, specifically veterans in this case. So we left off at the warning signs of suicide. Now, what can we, if we've seen some of these warning signs, like guilt or shame, being a burden, that we see people wanting to die if they're talking about it, if they're feeling empty or hopeless, they have switching mood swings, unbearable emotional or physical pain. We have all these things we talked about. If you start seeing these, what can we do?
Yeah, there are a few action steps. The first one is ask, and ask directly. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It's not an easy question, but studies show that asking at-risk individuals if they are suicidal does not increase suicides or suicidal thoughts. You're not planting seeds.
Right. They're not going to go, well, he asked me, maybe I should consider it. No, so that's not the issue. You do need to ask specifically, is this your thought?
Correct.
Okay.
Keep them safe. So reducing a suicidal person's access to highly lethal items or places is really important to keep this individual or yourself safe. So while this is not always easy, asking if the at-risk person has a plan and removing or disabling lethal means can make a difference.
Wow. I'm trying to figure out how to place some personal experiences with people that I know. You talked about keeping them safe. Many times they'll research how to commit suicide, because some people when they're in that space where they've made the decision, but they also don't want to suffer any more pain, might try to research a less painful way to go. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you see anything in search history, which they will probably be hiding anyway, but that should be something else you look out for?
Certainly.
Okay.
And ask and just have those difficult conversations. And one of the things I would recommend doing is practice asking. Some people have never said the word suicide, let alone, are you thinking about suicide? It is a difficult question to ask. It's incredibly difficult when you're asking the person that you love.
Yeah.
So practice it. Make it a common conversation to have.
That was one of those things that came out. I've seen and talked with individuals over the years that people don't want to. It's uncomfortable. It makes you uncomfortable because then you have a responsibility. If they say yes, well, I was hoping it would be no, and I don't want to have to deal with it. So again, listen. Be accepting that they're having a difficult time and be there for them. If you really care for them and you think it's serious, you will ask them. And we've heard this over the years. If somebody talks about killing themselves, don't take it as a joke. It's serious. Stop them. Ask them. You don't have to do it right in front of everybody. Pull them aside. Say, it's just me and you. Are you thinking about this for real? And that's an important thing. And I never thought about practicing.
Yeah.
That would make it easier on you. It becomes that muscle memory of speech. If you stand in the mirror until you get used to saying it, and then maybe that'll make it easier when you have to do it for real.
Absolutely.
Okay. What else can we do?
Yeah, so continuing with those action steps, you want to be there, listen carefully, and learn what the individual is thinking and feeling. Research suggests acknowledging and talking about suicide may in fact reduce rather than increase suicidal thoughts. So be open to what they have to say. It's not a time for you to judge or give advice or give feedback. It's a time to just listen and validate.
Right. There will be a time for action, and we're going to get to some steps on that as well. But you actually made me think of something. When I've talked, and in a group I have, we've talked about prayer. And we say pray out loud. Don't just internalize it. It becomes more real. You're giving more power to the words when you speak it. So if you I imagine a lot of people thinking about suicide don't vocalize it. It's all internal. So if you can get them talking about it, that may get them thinking about it and using a different neural pathway. Am I on a track here maybe?
Yeah, I think being able to connect and have that vulnerability and that moment to connect with others and that moment to share and to have that safe space to say, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm feeling. Thank you for just allowing me that space to share this.
Well, then that may be the key. If you do that once or twice or you keep following up with them, eventually they may reach out to you going, you know what, I told them and they're still here for me. I've told them and they didn't dismiss me. I've told them and they're listening, so maybe I can keep talking to them and figure this out. That won't work for everybody, but it might work for most people. It might be something that, and it's something that costs you nothing than a little bit of your time and being there for a friend or a family member. So listen and be safe, and don't try to solve it right away, right?
Right.
Which is what we're told with all of our friends. It's like, listen, let them speak, let them have that moment. I know because of what I do for a living, I tend to cut people off and keep talking because I don't like those quiet moments because it's an occupational thing for me. I'm doing it to you right now. I'm talking more than you. Sorry. So let's get to the next thing you can do. After, if they've talked to you, you've assured them that they can do that, it's safe, and you're listening to them, and you hear what they have to say, what could be the next step?
Yeah, help them connect. So 988 is the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can call or you can text. The crisis text line is 741-741. Save it in your phone. Save it in their phone. In the event they need it, it's there.
Right.
If they never need it, okay.
Right. So, again, those numbers, if you're going to call 988, just 3 digits, that's a phone call to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, 988. I guess you can also text them. And then there's also the crisis text line number, a different one, that's 741-741. I wanted to repeat that. And we may do that at the end of this as well, just so people have it in case you see somebody that may need it. What's next?
Yeah, and I want to stay a little bit on this. When you help them connect, I'm not asking anyone to be a mental health professional. I'm not asking anyone to be a counselor, but know where to find them. So find someone who is a trusted individual, a family member, a friend, a spiritual advisor, or a mental health professional. Know who these people are and who that individual trusts.
Right. And
you can reach out to them to help support you.
Okay. So give them a safe place, make sure their surroundings are safe, listen carefully, learn what they're going through, help them connect, and then if you've done that, it's still not over.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to stay connected. So staying in touch after a crisis or after being discharged from care can make such a difference. Studies have shown the number of suicide deaths go down when someone follows up with an at-risk person. So if somebody reaches out, you identify that they're feeling suicidal, you're able to get them connected to help. They're in treatment, they're getting help. You want to make sure that you follow up with them, stay connected.
Right. It's not a one-shot deal. If they've opened up enough to let you know that, yes, they were thinking about it, then you now have a responsibility to stay with them through this, because it's just such a devastating thing to the people that were left behind. And you hear stories, and these are, of course, popular on social media, and I don't know whether they're all true or not. I suspect a lot of them are. Somebody that was thinking about suicide will often say, I was on my way to do this. I was going home and it was going to happen, and a stranger smiled at me. Sometimes that's all it is. So if you care about this person, you can do a whole lot more than just smile.
Absolutely. It's that human connection.
Mm-hmm.
Makes them feel a little bit less alone.
Yeah. And again, as we're speaking about this and as people are listening, still sometimes there's just something more wrong. It's not just being sad or basic depression. There could be something very, very wrong with the way the brain operates, with what their body feels, and the symptom of very powerful emotional and physical pain can be side by side. And if they're doing that, there comes a point where you just don't want to live through that anymore, even though you know life is worthwhile, even though you know you're loved. I've been through this and seen it affect a family. And what do you do then? What do you do then if they just can't?
Yeah.
Don't want to.
Get them help. And in Florida, we have the Baker Act. Windmoor Healthcare is a Baker Act receiving facility. So
explain that. I mean, we know Baker Act, if someone's going to be a danger to themselves or others, you make a call, the judgment can be made, and it's, a 72-hour, all 3 days?
In this state, it's 72 hours, yes.
Right, which could be enough time to just help them get started on the process. I don't like the idea of committing somebody involuntarily. Nobody does. But if they're a danger to themselves or others, they may need that time to get started, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a perfect world. However, when somebody is in treatment with us, say on an involuntary basis, they have an opportunity to sleep at night. They don't have that temptation around them. If they've had a plan, if they've had thoughts of suicide, and they had, maybe they knew what they were going to do, at least when they're in treatment, they're removed from that temptation.
Right. And we're going to take one more break. I know there was something that I can't remember what it was. You said, don't let me forget, we want to address this. Do you remember what it was?
I do,
okay,
yes.
So when we come back, we're going to do that, and we'll wrap up the show. I know we're getting kind of heavy in the mental health world, but this is a great opportunity with the Compact Act, which we will also go back and address again so you know what it is and who is available to take advantage of the services through the Compact Act. And this is a good conversation with all that is going on in our world today, and the fact that I don't think there's enough conversation about mental health, and that's the number one thing we can do. Even if it's just you and a friend over coffee discussing mental health, you may broaden your experience or get some questions that you want to research so you're better aware. And you never know who might overhear you at the next table having a cup of coffee. So let's make this normalize mental health. This is Tampa Bay Today at Money Talk 1010 AM. We'll be right back.
If you have ever thought about remodeling your bathroom but were worried it would take too long or cost too much, then stop worrying. Right now, Jacuzzi Bath Remodel has designed a collection of high-quality custom products and perfected the one-day remodeling experience so you can enjoy your new bathroom faster than ever before. It's a worry-free bath remodel from the most trusted brand name in the business, Jacuzzi. For a virtual or in-home appointment, call 800-826-9895. That's 800-826-9895. 800-826-9895.
You've got a service company. Maybe it's plumbing or electrical or HVAC or roofing. and you've got your hands full just keeping the trucks on the road and managing your business day to day. You sure don't have time to worry about managing a website and trying to figure all that out. Beasley Digital takes care of that for you and make sure you're showing up on prime pages when people search for your kind of service work in their area. Go to buildmeabettersite.com. That's buildmeabettersite.com and let us worry about the website while making sure you get the online traffic you deserve.
Like any good agent, we're here for the open house, for the closing, for handing over keys. But because we're realtors, we're here for so much more. Agents who are realtors volunteer at nearly 3 times the national average. We're working to broaden access to credit, increase affordable housing supply, and ensure fair housing for all. And realtors are bound by a code of ethics. We're here for it all. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. That's who we are.
Welcome back to Tampa Bay Today at Money Talk 1010 a.m. I am Schreiner, and we have been speaking with Amanda Marker from Windmoor Healthcare. Thank you for joining us again today. I thought this would be just a quick little bit, but I'm fascinated with the world of mental health, having had issues, going back a generation or two in my family. I think we all know somebody who has lost someone to suicide. We've all experienced our own issues in life to varying degrees, lesser or greater. Some of you are blessed and may only be sad once in a while. There are people that have struggled with depression or anxiety or panic attacks or whatever it may be, and it's an ongoing thing throughout their life. We started this conversation specifically in regard to veterans, though, so I'd like to go back, if I can, Amanda, and talk a little bit more about the Compact Act. So help us understand exactly what it is. It was the Compact Act of 2020, but it went into effect January 17th of this year, so it is now active. Again, explain who's able to take care of the services under this and what's there for them.
Correct. The Compact Act is for veterans of servicemen and women who have served their country. The entire purpose of the Compact Act is to reduce and prevent veteran suicides. So someone eligible for the Compact Act is anybody who, 24 months of active service, and they were discharged under conditions other than dishonorable.
Right. As long as it was not a dishonorable discharge and you had 24 months, you're eligible. But there are other circumstances. Maybe they weren't in service for 24 months and may still be eligible, correct?
Correct. So 100 days under combat exclusion or in support of a contingency operation. Okay.
So which would mean some pretty more specific service that they had to go through that may have been more traumatic, that kind of getting bonus time added to your service. I was just going down some of the sections here as you were speaking, and section 202 and 203 stood out to me. Section 202 is about requiring the VA to establish an education program for family members and caregivers of veterans that have mental health disorders. I think that's invaluable to help family members understand what their loved one is going through and what's available to help them and what they can do. So I imagine that is that already established, or are they in the process of putting that together?
Now, that is part of this act that
Right.
I'm not terribly familiar with, but I can tell you the changes I'm seeing.
Okay.
The VA has established community care coordinators. So there are suicide prevention outreach specialists. There are community engagement specialists in the community really trying to get in touch with veterans and presenting these resources.
Right, because you don't know what to ask. If you don't know what questions you're supposed to be asking, where do you start? Well, that means you need to have somebody who knows what questions need to be asked, and they can just start giving you the answers, and then start finding out what your specific person is experiencing, and they can tailor it. Immediately after 202 was Section 203, and I love this one. It requires the VA to establish a task force on an outdoor recreation for veterans to make recommendations regarding the use of public lands or other outdoor spaces to facilitate their health and wellness. Have you seen the effectiveness of having recreational activities like fishing or hunting or things like that? Have you seen success with that?
So I can't speak for the VA, but I can speak as a clinician.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think we talked briefly about that mind-body connection and how being physically fit and staying active and keeping your mind engaged and having hobbies and having purpose, all of it really comes together to promote quality mental health.
Right, and I've seen that. There are organizations, and I'm going to bring up one specifically here in the Tampa Bay area called Hook a Hero. Hook a Hero, as in fishing. It started off with a fishing trip, with taking a veteran who was in crisis with another veteran who took him fishing, and they just relaxed together with a shared experience, understanding, they connected, and it worked, and it continued, and they've grown it. And they now get involved, and it could be golfing, it could be hunting, it could be hiking, it could be road trips, but it's all involved in outdoor, it's involved in activities, and it's involved with connecting with somebody who knows what you went through so that you know you're going to be heard and understood. And that comes back to the whole mental health aspect and why we said early on that if somebody's coming to you with an issue, don't just dismiss it and go, oh, tomorrow's another day. Get a good night's sleep, you'll be good to go. Don't do that because that may not be the case. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you have a bad day and go, oh, I'm just glad this day is over. But when it's mental health, when it's depression, when it's anxiety, when it's PTSD, it's going to take more than just a good night's sleep to get through it. And that's where you need to come in and be there for your friend or family member.
And for veterans under the Compact Act, that's a 30-day stay. That is 30 days worth of intensive acute care treatment to really get into what's going on, to really get into those underlying issues. And an individual, if they come into us, we do an assessment, and they're not quite meeting that acute inpatient stay, the Compact Act offers them 90 sessions of outpatient services as well.
You know, something else I saw in the Compact Act was that they're going to have specific training for VA police officers as well, so that they understand, like regular, not just, hey, you passed a class on suicide prevention, but regularly update it. And we see that in healthcare all the time. You have to continue your training to maintain your certification, so to speak, correct?
Absolutely. And there's an organization that's doing that right now here in Florida, and it's called Firewatch. And they came into Windmoor Healthcare and did training for our leadership, and we're looking to expand this onto training for all of our staff on specifically how to identify suicidal ideation in veterans, how to have that conversation, how to engage, what to look for, that language. If you're not from that military culture, this is what you need to know. And it really simplifies and gives you easy to digest skills on how to communicate with veterans.
Right. You know, another aspect of this was, and I was happy to see it, is they're looking at the gaps that may be for women in service or, you know, veterans that are no longer in service, gaps in their health care. They're recognizing that there's a difference between men and women, and they want to make sure they're looking out for women veterans who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. I thought that was key because we know how many veterans end up homeless because of their mental health and what they're suffering through. They've also made it a part of this act that they put together an annual report on the women's use of the VA healthcare system because they may be trying to self-care, which you and I talked about. Self-care, what does that look like? And, you know, when we see it on social media, it's spa day, it's margaritas on the beach getting a tan. But what does real self-care look like? You were telling me some great things.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And I actually wrote a blog recently about this, and it's on our website, windmoor.com. And if you look up how to practice self-care in everyday life, self-care is going to the dentist. Self-care is making sure we're financially living within our means. Self-care is making sure that we are putting healthy foods into our body, and we're moving and we're exercising. So self-care isn't always spa days and mud masks. Right. It's some of that really uncomfortable stuff that we don't want to do or we don't want to talk about, but it's so important that we do. Yeah,
you mentioned putting healthy food in your body lately. It started off as a joke, but I'm really starting to convince myself of this. The greatest threat to the world right now is high fructose corn syrup. It's not China. It's not anything. It's what we're putting in our bodies. And I use high fructose corn syrup because it is 10 times more sweeter than sugar. Your bodies don't know how to process it, and we don't need it. But it is cheap and it is easy, and it gets us hooked on some of these highly processed foods. So the more natural you can go with buy the raw veggies. Or they can be frozen too. That's fine. But get your veggies, get your lean proteins, and eat the healthy foods. And it'll start changing everything. The energy, the way your body functions is a massive undertaking. I joke about it, but high fructose corn syrup, the greatest threat to mankind. You're grinning at me.
I mean, I get it.
It's a goofy thing, but it's a big individual thing you can do for your personal health is eat well.
And it's that immediate dopamine hit as well.
Oh, yeah. It's like your brain lights up like you're doing cocaine. They've done the studies. Give somebody sugar, give them cocaine. Hey, look at that. It's kind of the same. They both light up the same sections.
Absolutely.
So that's why I say avoid the high fructose corn syrup. All right, so we're running out of time, Amanda. Any last thoughts that you would like to share? I know we're going to have you back next month.
I just really appreciate being here and being able to share this conversation and talk about suicide and talk about risk and talk about, and you had mentioned women veterans, and Florida has one of the largest populations of female veterans. And I don't have the numbers on it right now, but it's so important because being a victim of physical assault, the sexual nature, that military sexual trauma, is another eligibility piece for that Compact Act.
Right. And it's another aspect that puts them more at risk in a way that a lot of male soldiers would not be, not as many, the percentages. So absolutely, we want to take care of our veterans. The Compact Act is going to do that, and Windmoor Healthcare has set up the program to make sure that they have a specific program for veterans. So I very much appreciate that. We are just about out of time, so I wanted to end with this, and this I got from Amanda. If you or someone you know is thinking about suicide or hurting themselves or others, please call the National Suicide Prevention Line at 988, the Veterans Crisis Line. If 988, then press 1. Love God, love your neighbor, be nice, wash your damn hands, and don't forget your towel.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's Steve and Elizabeth Holland at the Holland Group, Retirement Wealth Advisors. We're the team that is